My name is Stuart McCready-Stocks. I am the Global Brand Director for Coates Digital. And if I just give you a little bit of insight in terms of what it is that I spend most of my time doing, and why today I really wanted to talk about this subject matter. It's something that's really important to me as an individual, but also I think really important to us as an industry and how we approach this. So I spend most of my time working with brands, looking at two things, really. The first thing is, what is it that brands are trying to achieve from a strategic perspective? And that could be internally, how we look at different processes, externally, how we interact with our consumers, or of course, with our supply chain partners. But ultimately, getting the right technologies in place with brands directly to support their strategic goals. And the second thing is working with their strategic suppliers to be able to ensure that it's that collaboration between brand and vendor that really helps us optimize and deliver against those strategic goals. So before I jump into or hand over to my colleague Neeraj, who will take us through the detail of the solution that we're going to look at today, I just want us to take a look back at the industry. I'm just going to share my screen for a second. Neeraj, will you just let me know if you can see my screen, please?
Yes, Stuart, I can see your screen.
Perfect. Thank you kindly. So, being able to produce technologies or methods or practices or processes that really support the industry, we need to make sure that we're addressing particular challenges and problems that the industry is currently facing. So this is how I tend to want to start and look back at what the industry is wanting and needing from us. So the first thing I do is, what are our consumers looking for from us? Now, when I say from us, I don't just mean me as a technology provider to brands and to vendors. I mean all of us that are key stakeholders in getting a garment from a design concept all the way through. So whether you're a brand, a sourcing business, a garment manufacturer, or a material manufacturer, we all have our own role to play. So what is it that consumers are wanting from us? Why is it that they're asking for that? So what's driving them to want to push or focus or consider different things? And last of all, what's our role in delivering that? So each of us, irrelevant of who we are through that end-to-end life cycle, has a part to play. And what's our individual roles to making sure that we can deliver against what it is that the industry and the consumers are wanting from us? Without the consumer, there's no industry. And it's the consumer that really drives the demand from us in terms of what it is that they're wanting. So with that in mind, I just want to look at a couple of things. With everything that I do and the people that I speak to, but also outside of those conversation and industry research that goes on, there are some real key things that, and most of these won't be new, but as we go through this presentation today, I think what we will find is that the focus keeps coming back and forth on certain things based on the industry and where we are and economically where we are as well. So there are a couple of things that we look at in terms of the biggest opportunities that we'd like to address and the biggest challenges that we're going to have in addressing those. So the first thing that I want to talk about is sustainability. Sustainability is usually something, or typically, it's a huge subject. And typically, I think people approach sustainability in terms of a green sustainability, looking at the environmental footprint that we as an industry leave on our planet. But I break sustainability down into two things. And the thing and the part that we're going to focus on today is much more around the people. So when I think about sustainability, I think the triple P: people, planet, and profit. People is the thing that I think is most commonly not considered. And it's certainly something that we are going to be addressing and looking at today. And I think there's a real balance on, or, in the industry, when we think about sustainability, we assume it's going to drive additional costs. Now, before we get to the cost piece, actually, one of the things that sustainability is a real issue for us, or a real focus for us, is because we as an industry has been subjected to, the fact that we may or we may not be greenwashing. There has been certain things that's happened over the last couple of years, which has really brought focus on what it is that we're saying is sustainable and how we are evidencing that. So achieving that sustainability and evidencing it to avoid that kind of greenwashing element. But in terms of then that balance between sustainability and cost, sustainability typically is seen as driving cost increase. So there's a real focus and a real challenge around how we manage that margin and profitability. We need to deliver. Our consumers expect that we deliver to them a good quality product at the right price point. But we as stakeholders, we as brands, we as manufacturers still need to make sure that we can sustainably produce going forward. And therefore, we need to look at our margins and our profitability as well. And the way that we do that, or certainly some of the additional challenges that we've had over the last couple of years, comes down to some of these problems that we have around supply chain disruptions. COVID for us as an industry was a time where supply chain disruption was at its highest. We could no longer rely on those relationships with our vendors and our mills that we had, that trust that we had between us, the fact that we understand how each other works, that went because we had to look at different options in terms of where we get our supply from, who's going to manufacture our goods for them, and building that relationship up from scratch again. Now, one of the ways that we can do that is by future-proofing manufacturing. So when we talk about future-proofing manufacturing, what we're talking about here is creating a digital capability within our supply chain, which means we do not have to rely on that trust element, because what we're doing is we're producing standards, benchmarks, methodologies, languages, communication sets that are really visible and transparent, that we all understand. And that removes the requirement for trust, because we now have true visibility. Therefore, we're able to talk, have those relationships built on scientifically calculated information, built on facts and a true level of visibility. So there's a lot of things here that are going off in the industry. And this makes for a playing field, which is, as we know in fashion, never standing still. Our consumers are all expecting different things from us, all at different times. Now, when we speak to the executives in the industry, both across all stakeholders, one of the things that's really driving, or they believe is really driving greenwashing, is because we have a lack of standards. Now, standards are the thing that we, between brand, sourcing business, vendor, are the thing that we agree that we are going to achieve together. It's the thing that we confirm. We have a mutual responsibility, a mutual relationship where these particular standards are something we all need to deliver to. In the event that they're missing, that creates this kind of uncertainty, this inability to be able to see exactly and agree on what those standards are. So part of making sure that we can be sustainable and avoid this greenwashing is delivering against these standards and defining what these standards are and how we can all use those standards as benchmarks. And later on in the presentation, Neeraj will talk about how we believe using GST technologies, we can deliver and support the industry in delivering these standards. The other thing that I also want to focus on here, because it's really important, is that even with standards and even with the ability to be able to share that information, the reality is that the industry is very much an on-demand industry. We want to get rid of the holding large amounts of stock that we don't ever sell through correctly. So produce on demand and correctly. But that does mean that we have to form more strategic partnerships with our vendors and our supply chain and our brands. And this really does focus on and really is part of that future-proofing manufacturing. So it's not just about having agreed standards, it's about how we strategically work together across all key stakeholders with those standards as a foundation, all speaking the same language. And again, Neeraj will take us into some of that detail later on. Right, when it comes to collaboration and sustainability, and this is something that none of us can achieve on our own. So it is about how we work together to deliver this. Now, most of what we're going to talk about, or certainly what we're going to spend a lot of time speaking about today, is in this kind of center section. So what I mean by that is that we all want to get to that point where we can look at cost optimization. Now, cost optimization in line with sustainability starts from a point where we actually have some manufacturing excellence. We need excellence in our supply chain that really drives lean, optimal ways of producing good quality garments. If we have the ability to drive that manufacturing excellence, and this is the real starting point, with those standards that we can share and all agree and work towards together, it puts us in a position where we can then effectively predict accurately those costs. So at certain points in the life cycle of a product, we need to be able to quickly and accurately create cost predictions. We can create those cost predictions because we have a background of underpinned with manufacturing excellence, and then we're able to have those fact-based negotiations across our supply chain. So we know using certain methodologies, we should be able to predict our costs effectively and accurately, and that's then the foundation for us to be able to have those fact-based negotiations. But the reality is that this thought process around that collaboration and sustainability should actually come further up the chain here. So, we should be looking at where we can consider these things in the development of our products. So how are we designing for manufacturers? So manufacturing. So when we are designing our products, having a mind to the fact that we want to make this in the most optimal way to get the right price point and create the value that our consumers want in our products. So this isn't just about anybody trying to work alone at this, about the brand trying to achieve this alone, the sourcing office or the garment producer working alone at this. It's about how we look at the end-to-end life cycle and what our roles are, all of us, our roles are in achieving this, and it will only happen with that real focus on collaboration. Right, I'm going to take this back to some real core basic steps, and I'm absolutely convinced that this is completely oversimplified, so forgive me, but I think the point is necessary. When we think about costing excellence, we think about three traditional pillars. Those three traditional pillars are, I need to have a good quality product, it needs to be at a certain price point, and it needs to be at market at a certain time. They are what I would call the three traditional pillars that we consider when really driving costing excellence. Now, and we have no choice about this, our consumers are expecting us to deliver alongside that a huge level of transparency and visibility. Well, hold on, it's great that we managed to achieve a certain cost point, but how did you achieve that? Can you evidence to us how you achieve a make price of X, how you achieved the fabric cost of Y? So the visibility and the transparency needed is much deeper than it has ever been, and we need to be able to evidence that as part of the costing excellence process. And the other, of course, is sustainability. So we want to make sure that through the costing processes, we're considering how we reduce our fabric waste, how we make sure that we're looking after the people that are producing our garments and their production environments are correct, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these sustainability elements are part of the overall costing excellence piece, and you cannot contextualize a cost just using those traditional three pillars, just cost, quality, and speed to market. It has to be contextualized with the transparency piece and evidence that, and also contextualized understanding the impact from a sustainability perspective. So I'm just going to show you what I call a costing profile. So this is a typically and very simply how we produce costs. We just focus on this center section here for a second. Typically, a cost is broken down into three kind of key areas. One is my fabric and trims, the other, and the cost associated to that. The other is the labor and the cost associated to that. And for those who aren't familiar with what we're calling SMV here, this is standard minute value. So the minute value associated to producing a particular garment and the associated costs of that minute. And then the third part is, of course, shipping, warehousing duties, and all those other things that we consider when we're costing our goods. Now, typically, these top two here, depending on the type of garment that you're producing, but typically over the industry, it really contributes around 70% of the cost. Now, when we think about costs, and I'm just going to focus on the left-hand side here, what we think about is actually how much does it cost to consume and make those fabrics and trims in this particular garment, and how much does it cost to make, so the make price of that particular garment. Of course, the cost of that make price will absolutely depend on where it is being produced. However, in order to be able to drive an accurate cost, we need to think about the consumption of those elements. So on the right hand side here, you'll see I talk about consumption benchmarks, and there are many technologies out there that we use. We have our own, of course, but there are other technologies also out there. So how do we calculate, what is the most optimal fabric consumption and thread consumption, etc. What we are going to be concentrating on today is actually how we produce an SMV, a labor benchmark, What is it that we're doing from a methodology perspective in order to be able to standardize, create an international language that is used across brand and vendors to create this accurate labor consumption? And then how do we translate that into a cost? And of course, that cost will depend on where it's being made and the capabilities of that particular production environment. Now, irrelevant of what we do with this, the important thing is that we are able to then share that costing data between us as a brand and between our supply chain partners, and the tools and the platforms that we have to do that. The important thing is that whatever it is that we're sharing is fact-based, it's scientifically calculated, it's sustainable, it considers all of the things that means that we are meeting all of our ethical responsibilities. And certainly when we look at the product that Neeraj is going to take us through, GSD cost is really, really focused on that. So in summary, before I hand over to Neeraj, just want to bring us back to those original points that we talked about in terms of what it is that the industry is expecting from us and what our role is in delivering that. We have to think about sustainability. So when Neeraj is showing us the solution that we're going to be looking at, and he's talking about that, please do think about how sustainability fits into what it is that we're looking at. How is it that we're evidencing and creating those sustainable benchmarks to avoid that type of greenwashing that we want to avoid, as we discussed earlier? Creating a particular price point. So how is this tool, how do we use technology to ensure we're producing optimally to deliver against those price points that our consumers are expecting of us? And lastly, how does this protect the future of our manufacturing? How does it really ensure that from now going forward, what we're doing is we're building on top of that foundation to really future-proof the way that we manufacture our garments for consumption in the industry today. So please do think about those points as Neeraj takes us through his slides and through his presentation, and then we'll come back for some questions at the end. Thank you, Neeraj. Much appreciated. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Stuart, for enlightening us. What we are facing right now, what are the challenges we are looking at, and where the world is heading also. So that is also very much clear to us. Now, speaking from here, it's more into the technical side of it. When we talk about SMB, there are a few challenges as a business we face. So first thing is the lack of visibility. So we see that there is not enough visibility that are happening on the shop floors. And these are happening in some other standards. The performance are something else, and it is being costed something else, and something else is being we get as a result out of it. So again, a lack of visibility is definitely there. Then incorrect SMB. Often the SMB which are used are not correct, and there are challenges that are not being met. And when it goes to the production floor, the SMB turns out to be something else. So there are variations, and these variations hurts profitability at the end. Then the costs are increasing. We know that supply chain disruptions, the material prices are going up, the cotton prices, the chemical prices, everything is going up, and the labor is also going up. So when both things are on the constant pressure, it becomes very a small room for maintaining the profitability. Then how do we make sure that we are ensuring the profitability is there, and with that we can sustain the businesses, we can run again. Because when the profitability is not there, the business cannot scale. It's very simple, and it goes in both the hands together. Then now the times are gone where we had the larger lead times. The lead times have shortened, and we are now going back to the 45 days, 40 days, 30 days of lead time. So again, it requires more of a digitization at the same time. Plus the complexities are increasing. There is a change in the the taste of the people. The people are buying more of fashion now. The order cycles have gone shorter. The number of style has gone up. Now it creates a problem at the same, that how do I handle those complexities? And again, the opportunity is losses. So if a minute is lost, that is a loss. So I don't get that minute again to cover that up. And it becomes very challenging when my lot of minutes are lost and I'm not able to fulfill that. So with that, I move ahead with some of the production challenges. First thing is the unknown efficiency. When I say unknown, means that you have an efficiency which you're using, but that efficiency does not translate the real picture that you are following right now, because your efficiencies are based on the performance. Now, these are performance of the people that you have captured. Basically, you have captured the time studies, you have done the capacity studies. Now, this is based on purely the performance. Performance today can be something else, tomorrow can be something else. So a business cannot rely on some performance. There has to be standards, there has to be benchmark. Then again, the production capacities which I'm establishing, that I will produce X amount of units or X amount of minutes, they're again coming back from the same set of calculation, which is the performance. Because I'm again using an SMV over there or SAM over there that establishes my cost or maybe my capacities. So I do have issues of underbooking and overbooking as well. Then lines become imbalanced because there are challenges which in the line which we are facing. Then whatever the incentives we are trying to give to our people, the people are not able to meet those incentives. It's very simple bad because I'm taking somebody's performance and giving that performance to match to pitch somebody, someone else. So it will not be able to match. Some will be able to match it, some will not be able to match it. Some it will be easier for somebody and it will be very difficult for somebody. So again, there are frustration inside the workers, and then they tend to leave the business and go to the next factory. And again, if you have a challenge of attrition in your business, that is the root cause. And at the end, what happens? Whatever the CM costs I'm trying to met at the end and the production floor, I'm not able to. And there are escalations on that cost, and I'm not able to justify that escalation because my calculation has gone wrong in the initial. So again, these are the challenges that we feel, a business faces, and it's there. It's a day-to-day life. It's not something which is not there. It's every day we are facing. Some other style will have one issue, or it will have multiple issues. Now, the root cause of that is simple. That there's a term called work content, and work content is very simple. That how much time a particular activity will take to get complete. It's a very simple definition. But again, this definition again divided into three basic principles, which Stuart also shared. It's cost, time, and quality. So as a manufacturer, or as a business or a brand, I'm trying to make sure that my garment, it should be of the right quality, it should be produced on the right time, and it should be produced with the right cost as well. If I focus on any one of the point too much, the other two definitely has issues. If I focus too much on the quality, the time and cost has challenges because the time consumption will be more, my cost goes up. If I focus too much on the time that I want to have more pieces from my same line, then what happens? There are quality rejections. Once the quality rejections are there, then again my cost goes up because I need to again repair it. So it's a golden triangle, which I always say, and we need to make a perfect balance. Then only we are able to produce the right amount of piece in right cost and right quality. Now, work content is being used in a lot of places. First thing is the product cost. Second is the efficiency, capacities, production planning, line balancing, productivity, incentives. And there are other, cases also where work content is being used. Now, if you look at this is start to end of your apparel supply chain. It starts from your product cost, which is the design and the development stage, and it goes to the incentive till the piece has been produced and it has been shipped, and you have to pay the incentives, or maybe the salaries, or maybe calculate the productivity. So SMV is used everywhere, and if you're not using the SMV with the right set of tools, we always face a challenge. Now, there are typical ways of calculating the SMV. First thing is the historical estimate. Now, historical estimates is like as a person from a factory, for example, or maybe from the branch side or anywhere, I just use my past experience. That I produced this style last year and I had 1,000 piece output from the line. I will use same and there will be a cost generated. Now, this is purely based on my assumption. But when I was assuming, I did not look at in what could be in the future. My style can have variation. My machines can be varied and my people can also be varied because my operator gets changed. So if I'm working with three different, with always constantly changing parameters, I cannot be, future proof. So again, I bring a lot of subjectivity if I use a historical estimate. So historical estimate should not be used. Well, people now start moving away from this. They're not using much. But again, yes, in certain cases, this is being used by a lot of, historical estimates. Now, second is the time study. Time study is very simple where your industrial engineer goes to the shop floor, they take a stopwatch, they start timing the people. They take 10 cycles, 15 cycles, 20 cycles. It's a very simple process they do, but it involves a lot of, it should be done with a lot of, confidence level, and plus it should be more of concentrated study that we do. Because time study also has its own problem because it is just based on the performance. Because I'm using the word again and again, performance, that it is just based on the people performance. Performance today can be something else, tomorrow can be something else, because it's constantly changing. And I cannot rely on a variable which is always changing. So performance brings subjectivity. Again, I cannot give that performance of 1%, other person to match it because there is no standard. So the standard is missing, the benchmark is missing from this time study. It's just based on my people, ability to perform it. And also
Neeraj.
sorry, Stuart. Yeah.
No, really, really sorry. And I think this is a really important point, right? Is that we see time and time again the way that people are pulling together costings is that they look at historic costs for particular styles. So I know that I want a similar style to that one that I had last season, and I want it now for this season. Now, all of that information that we had, talking to your first point there in terms of the historical information, has changed. My raw material costs have changed, my manufacturing costs have changed. So the fact that I'm using historical data as a starting point to project or predict a cost of a new style is completely inaccurate. And it certainly won't get us to that point where we are considering sustainability and price point. And the time study piece around what one person can do and what a second person can do. If I then hold the labor costs from that historical costing and I put it against factory one and I put it against factory two, the individual people that are producing that garment in factory one and factory two may be at very different levels from a skill set perspective, right? The training, etc. They are also producing this garment potentially in very different production environments. So the machineries are different, the layouts are different, etc. So if we try to use historical information and time studies as a starting point for any of our costings, our starting point is completely flawed. It can't be sustainable. It can't be accurate. It's a really important point. Sorry to interrupt you, Neeraj, but I just wanted to stress that more
Thank you
importantly.
for enlightening that. That's
No problem.
definitely wonderful. Right. So again, time study causes that. And also when we do time study, there are cases where operator or the people are doing unwanted activities. So these unwanted activities are very difficult to eliminate from the time study because then I need to perform a hand in motion study, but time study is not performing the hand in motion. So again, time study bring a lot of subjectivity. And again, if I'm using a rating, then the rating is being, again, it's very subjective because for me, our operator can be 75 and for the same operator, for other person can be 85. If both of us are doing the study for the same particular operator, it's 10% variation. So if I live with that so much of subjectivity inside these methods, then why should I use those methods? It's very simple calculation, very simple question. I should not be using that because whatever I'm costing it, but I'm doing it, when I go to the shop floor, it will not match. And if that is the cases where we have seen more than 95 to 98% cases, this happens, where the costing it does not get matched, it goes up and down. Generally, it is up rather than down. So third point, which is very important, is the scientific tool, which we are going to explain you today, how we do that in the GST cost. Right. So moving ahead, it's basically the method time calculation. So how do you remove the person? So I basically said that, performance is something we should not look at. Then when I'm saying that we should not look at performance, what we should look at? We should look at the method because method is the key over there. How that job is performed is the key to look at. And what are the environment of that particular operation that is being done? What's the nature of that is the area to look at. The operator can change from every day. That's why we should not look at operation. So basically, but when we are saying in GSD, if you look at the bottom pyramid, let me just get my points over here. So if I talk about in GSD, there are motion codes. So there are 39 motion codes. Now these motion codes have been defined. These are predetermined motion time standards that have a predefined determined time. And it started with the concept of the scientific management. It started with early in the 1900s. So if you're interested, you can definitely go onto the Google and type about the father of scientific management, and you'll find a proper explanation why this concept started. So GSD almost started 43 years back. So it is not a new tool which we are speaking about today. It's a really, really an old tool that we are talking. And that has been proven and has been used and widely accepted throughout the world. It's not something which a new tool has been invented and showing you to. I'm sure you have heard GSD name in your part of life over there. So again, so GSD has the motion, method time standards. So we look at the method, we identify the method, we standardize the method. So standardization definitely becomes a key over here. So now when I talk about, so one of the code is MG2T, that is match and gets two parts together. So that's very, by the two panels, I hold the panel and do my activities. So this is how the code is done. So I take the first panel, I go to the next panel, I pick both the panel, the line, then I reput my hand 39 motion codes to establish the motion standard for my operations. So together, they becomes a feature like collar, sleeve, front, back, guard, bottom having packing. These my simple features. When I combine these features together, they become a style, basically a shirt. So we follow a bottom to top approach over here that we do go into the basic motion that is could be the last minute detail of any operation. We quantify into that, we break down into that and remove the unwanted activities from there. And then from there, we build the operation and then build the features. And then we build the styles, basically a complete garment. So that's how the GSD foundation, it goes to a very minute level as well. Also, the key important thing to be noted over here is when I have my data structured on a feature level, it is very quick for me to build a garment. Like if I have a shirt, if I'm looking at if it has sleeves, it has short sleeve, it has long sleeve, it has pocket, round pocket, square pocket. So I can just pick up those blocks, pick and choose from there, and completely make a garment. So our data is structured in a way that if you want to do a quick costing as well, that can also be done with the help of our solution, wherein the technology piece comes into play. We'll show you a small glimpse also at the end. So do you like to highlight anything over here?
Yeah, yes, please, Niraj. So for those of you who are not industrial engineers or are not as close to the manufacturing processes like I'm not an industrial engineer, this will look quite scary. And there's a lot of detail that is captured, a lot of information that is required in order for us to be able to quickly and effectively build those costs, those projected costs, as we talked about earlier on. But the reason I'm raising that point is because you don't have to worry. All of that hard work around capturing those motion codes or capturing that SMV value is all contained within the solution. Niraj, would you just circle the feature level on the pyramid for me for a second? So this is typically where most people who are on businesses who are not industrial engineers interact with the solution. So, for example, I'm taking a tech pack. I'm then looking at exactly what style, the data that I have in front of me, and I'm comparing that against the features within the GSD tool. This means that very quickly and easily, without needing to be an industrial engineer, I have access to all of that detail below because that's already stored in the system at that feature level. So I can say, this is my collar, this is my cuff, this is my front, this is my back, and very quickly and effectively and accurately create that projected cost using all of that predefined detail that's below. So don't see this as something that's really scary. It's not. And I think the other important thing that I want to raise at this point is GSD is a method. It's a standard. It's a way in which we work within the manufacturing environment. GSD cost is the technology that we access those standards and those methods through. So what Niraj is talking about here is how the foundations of GSD cost are built, which is using the GSD methodology. So don't be afraid. It's easy to use. Even I can do it. But of course, if you are an industrial engineer or you're a manufacturer and you do need to interact with the solution at that lower level, then of course that's there available for you to do as well. Thank you, Niraj.
Thank you, sir. So moving on to the next. So now I'm going to show you the application of, so when I said the codes, how the codes looks like, how the operation. So I'm just showing you a very simple operation over here and plus a code as well. And this is another video. So this is MAP2, that's one code. So I take a panel, hold into my next hand and place it over there. So the application could be, I'm placing a panel over the other panel, if I'm putting a label, and if I'm putting a pocket over my panel. So these could be the application. Now on the below side, there is one operation which I would like to play over here. So this is a cuff stitch that we are doing, a very normal operation, which a lot of factory does it. So again, the codes are simple that I take the cuff from here, I place the cuff on this jig over here, then I close the jig and put on the machine, then I do a 34 centimeter of stitch, does the back tack and the closing of that, and then open the jig and place it over here. Now again, this has been translated into the code. So if I just stop the video for a second and then go over. So over here, you can see that my codes are like MAP2. That's where I obtain the cuff, place it onto the jig. Then I close the jig over there, the template. Then I position that into the foot where I'm positioning that onto the needle. Then I do an automatic back tag. Then I do a 34 centimeter of stitch. Then I do a back tag again. Then I trim the thread. Then I do a removing of the template from the machine. Once the stitch is done, then I open the check, put a cuff aside on my lap, and then do the bundle handling. So you look at bundle handling is also included. Your motions are also included, and this entire thing has been translated into the motion codes, wherein we do not look at basically the person of who's doing the job. We just look at the motion, what motion needs to be produced. So that will produce a standard for me. That this is a standard which I have produced. Now this standard will include my allowances as well, what my personal allowances are there, what my the machine allowances are there, and if there are any contingency allowance, those allowances will also be included in this particular operation analysis. Right. So moving on to the next slide. So again, this is on the allowances, which I was explaining that the allowances will be included. My machine allowances will be included. Personal allowance will be included. Machine and contingency. These all will be included into my calculation. And it shows me what will be my total SMB as well. Now moving on to the next is the...
Sorry, Neeraj, can you just go back one slide for me? Apologies. So this is where, and I want to go back to those original points that I made at the beginning of the presentation, talking about creating standards that we can all agree on, a fact-based way of working, which is contextualized by different environments or different skill sets, which is allowing us to be also sustainable. So what you saw there was Neeraj using motion to create a standard, but also that standard SMV using motions is contextualized by the sustainability piece, so that we know that these people making these goods have to have personal breaks. We know that there's going to be machine delays on here, and there's other things that may happen which also cause delays to this. So what this is doing is taking that standard, using those motions, which we just saw was scientifically calculated, and contextualizing it using this type of information to make it sustainable. So that if anybody wants to know, how did we get to the point where the motions were captured within that particular operation, it's fully evidenced. How did you make sure it was sustainable? We use these types of allowances, fully evidenced. At this point here, coming back to our 2 points, sustainability and future-proofing manufacturing, and which will translate ultimately into a particular price point, we are doing this as we go along. It's at the core of everything that GSD is trying to achieve here. Thanks, Neeraj.
Thank you, Stuart. All right. So moving on to the next is basically that GST, the benefits. So first thing, we got a method analysis. So it's a scientific method categorization that we have got from the GST. Then we are building the standards, because standard is something which is definitely missing. So we build the standard. By generating that, SMB is a byproduct of it. When we do the method analysis and standard generation, we get the SMB out of it. So SMB is just a number at the end, if you look at. But there's a huge amount of methodology that has gone inside in creating those SMB. Last thing, but not the least, is the performance. We get a performance evaluation that where I'm standing right now. If I made the standard today, if I'm at 10 minutes and my people are at 15 minutes or 14 minutes or 13 minutes, this is where my benchmark comes in. That I know where I am standing right now on, where I should reach. So basically, GSD is a mirror which tells you where you're standing right now and where you should be looking. Like every day, if you dress up, you see yourself, how I'm looking today. So same thing, GSD tells you each and every day that, how do you look, today and where you have to reach further and how do you further refine it, because it's a continuous improvement that we are looking at. So again, in the GSD core is the manufacturing excellence is the key over here that, GSD focus about manufacturing. And you need to build the manufacturing excellence. Then only you will be able to improve your efficiencies. Then only you will be having the increased output and standardized skill, which will ensure that your qualities are also ticking up. Your production planning are better, your lines are balanced, and there's a higher performance always from a team. Once this is achieved, then definitely the costing optimization will happen. And you will be having a much closer cost predictions and always a fact-based negotiation. Because right now, a performance cannot be negotiated because a performance is something else. For each factory, the performance can be different. But again, if we are talking about the facts, like what machinery, what method, what allowances, then we know that, yes, it's a fact. We are talking on a factual informations rather than only the performance information. So would you like to highlight?
Yes, please. Just on that point, imagine this world where I am producing a projected cost. I'm in the brand and I'm sitting there and I'm putting a costing together. I'm using a scientific way of producing. Here, I'm just talking about the bill of labor, right? So the SMV cost. I'm producing this SMV cost, and I can then go to my vendor and say, I'm expecting you to, this is an 8-minute garment. I'm expecting us to be able to manufacture this within 8 minutes. And this is how I'm expecting you to do that. Fully considered, fully documented, fully sustainable, everything built in that needs to be built in for that to be achievable. Imagine that world where there is no doubt we're all speaking the same language. We are communicating using that GESD methodology and those codes. And then actually, of course, each manufacturer is going to be slightly different, and their working environment is going to be different. Their machine is going to be different. And so the manufacturer comes back and says, actually, I know in this particular operation you've got it down as 1.2 minutes, but actually, because of my specific environment, it's 1.4. At that point, we remove any greenwashing. We remove any lack of visibility. We remove any of that lack of trust, because this is fact-based negotiations which are driving that quality and that price point that we want to achieve, which our consumers are expecting us, fully considering the sustainability piece. Thanks, Neeraj.
Thank you, Stuart. So moving on to next. So this is just a case study that we have achieved. So just to show you that what kind of work we are looking at. So this is in one operation which was done earlier. So this is an just a simple operation. So you can look at the workplace layout over here, and then we improve the sorry. So if you improve the workplace layout over here, you see that the handling has reduced, and there is a specific way that has been defined over here. So that specific way helped me to reduce the minutes also, and plus improve the productivity at the end. So at the end, we are looking at that, how do we create that synergy, and which gives you a better cost output and better productivity at the end, because that is what everyone is looking at. Same, we also have one more example, which I'm definitely not showing you, but yes, there are different applications which we can do with the help of GSD on the shop floor. So after that, our technology piece comes in play, wherein our software solution is there, which has the style and features library, which has method analysis, pair batch tool, there's a production planning integration, there are dynamic alerts and reporting tool, and plus our own library as well, which we have created over past many years. I'm just going to show you that a glimpse of that particular solution. Meanwhile, I'll hand over to you, Stuart, for that. Meanwhile, I just bring the solution just to show a small glimpse.
Brilliant.
Just a second.
So just while Neeraj is doing that, what you saw when we looked at the method improvement is that with our GSD experts, using our GSD methodology, we're going into factories and we're helping them understand how to achieve the standards that we are setting. So using the GSD technology, we're creating a bill of labor, which is down to motion level. We're then taking that into factories and helping factories understand how to achieve that set target time in their own specific environment, in their own specific production environment, with their own machinery, with their own people. And like Neeraj said, is that no longer are we using people's performance as a benchmark. We're using a scientifically calculated standard and then benchmarking our people against that standard. I'll hand back over to you, Neeraj, while you take us through this.
Right. So this is the solution, just a dashboard. I'm not going to go into much of detail, but just a simple glimpse of that. So it tells me how many styles I have, how many features. Features are the blocks that we showed on the roadmap on the triangle. Then how many operations are there, how many macros. So I'm just taking you to the feature set, that what data we hold in the GSD. So just give me a second. It is loading. So basically, I'm just going to show you a small glimpse of the libraries that we have in the solution, which are data which we have already prepared from many years, and have defined the standard for each and every product, at how that functions and things are there. Just give me a second. It's taking a minute to load. Yeah. So these are my product libraries over here that I have a leisure top, which contains my round neck t-shirt, polos, and hoodies and jackets, the type of product. Then I have blouses, bra, basic shirts, baby wear, common features. And then I have body wear, formal shirt, trousers, and woven bottoms as well. So these are my different product categories, which we have categorized the data. Now, for example, I'm just going to leisure top. So these are my, let's say I have a neck. I have 173 different type of necks available in my solution. So if I click on that, these are my list view. And if I want to see an image view, I can see an image view as well. And I can go inside to each and every feature and find out what's the standard for that particular operation. So yes, that's a small thing which I'm showing you 1% of what GSD can do it. But yes, this is the data which I want to highlight over here. And I think with that, I hand over back to you, Stuart. This is what I think.
Thank you, Neeraj. And I think just to kind of say, go back to the point I was making earlier on, you could see that as a feature, I could quite quickly choose and add that to my bill of labor. So I don't need to be an industrial engineer to do that. Right, we need to move on to, conscious of time, we need to move on to questions and answers. Thank you kindly. And for those that haven't done already, please do move to the question and answer tab and place your questions there, and we can start going through them. Okay, so first one I just wanted to ask, what percentage of apparel companies are using GSD cost and what percentage of companies are using historical data? The answer to that one is very simple. Too many apparel companies are using historical data as their starting point. Now, GSD cost has been in the market now for around about 45 years. That methodology is widely used across a real mixture of brands and manufacturers. We have some very large international global brands and their associated manufacturers that are using this, as well as some very small brands and manufacturers who want to make sure that they're starting their journey off in the best way possible to future-proof them going on. Neeraj, how many installations across the globe do we currently have of GSD?
I think more than 300 different groups, basically, if you look at.
So we have a lot of installations out there, but the answer is there are not enough. And I think, if I'm completely honest, part of that is that people are a little bit fearful of starting this journey. They see it as a large, a large undertaking and a large onboarding. And actually, this is very simple to get set up and running. It's very quick, it's very simple, and it's something you can do now, and it not be too, to consume too much of your time and energy to get you on the right journey. So thank you for that question. Next one, in countries like India, we have different labor wage structures in different states based on government laws, and we have factories in different states and locations. How do we calculate a wage structure in such a situation? Okay, there are many ways to do this, but typically what we find is that most brands actually have already pre-agreed a minute value with those particular vendors. So for this particular season, we are going to agree a minute value of X. How that minute value is calculated, there's no one rule. And whether some are calculated accurately, some are poorly, some are ethical, some are not, is a very big question mark. What we do with GSD cost is we have a relationship with an independent business called the Fair Wage Network. That Fair Wage Network supplies us with the data for those particular regions. So if I've got an 8-minute garment and I want to put that into 3 different locations within India, Fair Wage Network provides us the minimum, the living and the fair wage for those particular environments so that we can see and we can ring fence and say, we know the minimum labor to put it in that geography or that geography is X based on this independent information coming to us. So we are avoiding any unethical wage restrictions or anything that we're trying to get into there. Whether all production processes like cutting, sewing, finishing time included in SMV? The answer is yes. Neeraj, I'll let you answer that one.
Yes, that's all. Everything is included in the SMV. From the data from our library, you can also find the cutting SMVs and finishing and packing. Yes, that's good.
In a cheaper labor cost environment, how do we bring the GSD SMV-based production methods? It's even more important in the cheaper labor cost environments to get this methodology correct. And I say that because we can't rely on labor costs being cheap going forward. What we're trying to do here is not rely on a heavily manual processes. Again, it kind of goes against the future-proof in manufacturing here. We're trying to ensure that we are helping and supporting manufacturers come into this digital compatibility world. So having tools like GSD costs to be able to produce these methods, whether labor is cheap or whether labor is expensive, is irrelevant. And we can no longer rely on those regions where labor is cheap, and therefore we don't have to have these standards. Those days are gone. And if we're not already on that journey, we need to be considering how to get on that journey as quickly as possible. From a brand perspective, we see that suppliers use different machines and processes. Example are high automation, semi or non-automation. What would your suggestion be for standardization? Okay, so Again, just like we talked about earlier, this isn't about one part of the stakeholders or one part of the process being managed through GSD. Where this really comes into play and where it delivers the most amount of value is where both the brand and the manufacturer have GSD cost. So the brands, of course, are not expected to know every single detail about each of the vendor's production environments. We don't expect them to know that. So when a brand produces a target cost, it uses what we call a virtual production environment. So that is a digital twin of what we would say is a modern working environment today. Now, we understand that that modern working environment may, for some of our vendors, be a stretch, right? We may that the level of automation that we put in that modern working environment may be greater. For others, actually, they will be able to outperform what we're calling the modern working environment, but we have to have a benchmark. What we then do is we share that data with the vendors and they use their own specific production environment. So their own instance of GSD is configured to be a digital twin of their specific production environment. So if I take that bit of labor from the brand and I put that bit of labor into my vendor's GSD cost, that will be recalculated based on that specific vendor's production environment. And it's then where we start to see those differences. So again, as a brand, I'm expecting to be an 8-minute garment. When I put it in vendor A, it's a 9-minute garment. When I put it into vendor B, it's a 7-minute garment. But I now have full visibility of why vendor A is 1 minute longer and why vendor B is 1 minute shorter in terms of the time. Because we are able to share that bill of labor back and forth with full transparency, with full visibility. And that's exactly how we really make the most of this. So both brand and vendor needs to have GSD costs so that we can collaborate most effectively on here. I think we may have time for one more question before we are due to close. When you make a time study in different countries, you find out different minutes, such as one t-shirt in X country is 5 minutes and 6.5 minutes in another country. How do you tolerate this type of difference with calculating the cost of minutes? Okay, I think I just answered some of that question. So we are expecting that each of our vendors will have a different minute value associated to producing the same garment because each of our vendors will have a slightly different production environment. What we need to do is we set a global standard, which is then contextualized by each of those individual production environments. So that is something that we're used to handling, but we get the right level of visibility to understand why. One more. I think we have time for one more.
Yeah.
Can GSD be used in spinning, weaving, and processing industries also? Or is it just meant for the garment industry? Neeraj, I'll hand that one over to you.
So basically, it depends on how the processes are. If processes are more into the machine, then the motion codes, basically the handed motions are less. So then definitely I would not suggest you. But again, if the handed motions are more there in the spinning and weaving, definitely it can be applied because the concept applies anywhere. We have implemented GSD not only to the garmenting, but to shoes as well, and then jewelry as well. And plus, the bags making or the ornaments making. There are different applications that we have done. Even the airbag manufacturing uses GSD as well. So GSD can be applied anywhere where handed motions are there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Neeraj. Please do get in contact with us. There are many more questions that we just don't have time to answer today. Our contact details are on the screen. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. And of course, we will do our best to answer those for you. Thank you, Neeraj, for supporting. Thank you for the Apparel Resources team for helping us set up this webinar today. And we hope to speak to many of you in the coming days and weeks. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.